Welcome, everyone. My name is Clay Taylor, and I'm a Principal PM Architect in the Intune organization at Microsoft. Today, I'm here to talk to you about Zero Trust in Action, securing endpoints with Intune. Let's start with a quick refresher about what Zero Trust is and how it's going to help you secure your devices end-to-end by enforcing, verifying, and limiting access to corporate resources. I know you've probably seen this slide before, but we're just going to do a quick refresher. These are the three principles that Microsoft really follows when we look at Zero Trust guidance. The first, verify explicitly, is making sure that you're constantly validating all access attempts, authorization attempts, as well as making sure that your devices are healthy and compliant. It's really the cornerstone of our Zero Trust story. Second is using least privilege access. Least privilege access is the principle that's been around the longest. It's something that I've been talking about for 20 plus years, and honestly, it's not going away. It is an absolute must in your Zero Trust strategy. I will say that to me, this is the hardest of the three principles to actually implement in practice. It's going to take the longest time, and it's also going to have the most impact on your end users, but we're here to help with that. Finally, assume breach. This is probably my favorite of the three principles because it really does cause a mind shift. In order to assume breach, you basically have to admit to yourself that at some point an attacker is going to get access to some sort of resource or identity, etc., in your environment. Under the assume breach principle, you have to limit your blast radius. The whole point of this is to make sure that that attacker can't use that access to pivot to other resources in your environment. Now, at Microsoft, we've really taken Zero Trust seriously. This is a mapping showing how Microsoft products actually map to NIST Zero Trust capability mapping diagram. This is something that I'm very proud of because it's, basically started out as a journey where we did not have all the capabilities that you're seeing today. And we basically have used this diagram to help us shape our Zero Trust vision. You'll see here that we cover everything across the board when it comes to Zero Trust. Today, we're just going to be focused on Intune, but I wanted you to really get an idea of just how broad our coverage is at Microsoft using things like the Microsoft 365 E5 suite. So, as I said, we're going to be focused on Intune Zero Trust. So let's jump right into that. People always ask me, what's the most important piece of Zero Trust? And, what I always say is, well, it really depends on what the attackers are doing at the moment. And what I can say is that they're really focused on your device estate. And this isn't just your corporate devices. This could be a dedicated device. This could be a mobile device. This could be a BYOD device. It could even be something like an AI agent, and attackers are really going after them. So much so that it's been determined that 92% of security breaches target unmanaged or poorly managed endpoints. That's a huge number. And it's, to me, one of the main reasons why using Intune to actually implement a Zero Trust strategy is so important. You've probably seen a superhero movie where you basically have someone going and collecting a bunch of pieces to a puzzle to open up a portal. And I really want you to think about Intune as part of that puzzle of Zero Trust. And if we break it down, we basically have the Uber Zero Trust strategy for your company. And that is then going to be backed by your cloud native strategy, which requires the Intune platform to actually implement, and it's implemented using cloud native workloads. And if you can't tell, cloud native is going to be a recurring theme of this talk. And it's something that, to us, it's top of mind right now. We really are focused on making sure you as a customer are able to move to cloud native management. So what is cloud native management? Cloud native endpoint management is a combination of using Microsoft Intra ID and Microsoft Intune. It's going to allow you to have a holistic cloud-first approach to protecting both your identities and your devices, but it's really built for hybrid work. It's built for this new age that we live in where your end users are going to be working from home, they're going to be working from the office, they're going to be working from all over the world and want to get their job done no matter what their device they're on and no matter where in the world they are. Zero trust is a strategy, but cloud native is how you execute that at scale. It really maps to the three principles we just talked about very cleanly. With cloud native, you're going to verify explicitly with conditional access and strong identity signals. You're going to enforce least privilege access by controlling elevation, apps, and configurations without blocking productivity. And finally, to assume breach, you're going to be integrating device risks, threat signals, and also setting up automatic remediation. Cloud native endpoint management really makes those three principles continuous and enforceable, not periodic and manual. So let's look at how Intune features map to those three principles. So with verify explicitly, we're going to be looking at things like device compliance policy, conditional access, Windows Hello for Business, autopilot, and remote help with dual auth and compliance validation. We can even throw things in there like cloud PKI, as well as multi-factor authentication for all of your admins. For least privilege access, the features we're going to be looking at are things like endpoint privilege management, including things like run as current user and shared device support, as well as tunnel for mobile application management, role-based access control, and shared device support. Finally, with assume breach, these are going to be features like enterprise application management, advanced endpoint analytics, encryption, OS patching, and mobile threat defense configuration. So we talked about how Intune features map to those zero trust principles. Now, let's take it one step deeper, and we're going to focus on Windows. And let's look at the Windows zero trust lifecycle. I have to give a call out to Lindsay Miller from our Intune marketing team here. And she came up with this slide to help explain the zero trust lifecycle for Windows devices. And I think it does a very good job of basically hitting all the high spots that you need to think about. Not just thinking about one particular piece of the puzzle, but looking at the entire lifecycle of a device from start to finish, starting with onboarding, where we're looking at things like autopilot plus intra-only join. We're looking at provisioning at scale, and then moving into get secure, where we're looking at things like enforcing compliance and conditional access policies on day one. This is also going to include features like endpoint privilege management, cloud PKI, as we talked about a little bit earlier, and then also our Windows policy configuration agent, which I'm going to show you in a demo here in just a few minutes. Next up, we have keep current. This part of the lifecycle is going to include things like Windows Auto Patch, hot patching, as well as enterprise app management. It's going to allow you to deploy and manage your updates and apps automatically. Stay secure. This is where you're going to be monitoring the health and maintaining compliance over time. It's where we're going to be looking at, actually including connectors like to Defender for Endpoint or another mobile threat defense product that you may be using. This is also going to be a time for our change review agent to shine. Then we have remediate. This is where you're going to be looking at things like the vulnerability remediation agent that actually connects you to our Defender Threat and Vulnerability Management product to actually determine whether or not you have out-of-date apps in your environment that need to be patched by your Intune admin. It's also going to allow you to detect, fix, and recover quickly in the event of a breach. Then we have optimize and support. This is where we're going to be focused on features like advanced endpoint analytics, security copilot, as well as remote help. Finally, we have offboarding. For offboarding, we're going to be utilizing features like remote wipe and the new AI-powered device offboarding agent. So this shows you how the Windows Zero Trust lifecycle really allows you to implement your Zero Trust strategy end-to-end for Windows devices. Now I want to do a deep dive into a couple of features and products within the Intune and Intune Suite product line that I think really are the most important for you. We don't have a lot of time today, so I'm having to hit the high spots. And to me, these are the items that are most important for you to start with. The first of those is endpoint privilege management. And specifically, I want to show you the new support approval function that will be in your console. The first thing I want to discuss is licensing. I know that many of you, as soon as I started talking about endpoint privilege management, you turn it off or you're thinking about turning off because it's not included in Intune P1, which you own today. But there's great news. For those who own Microsoft 365 E5, endpoint privilege management will be included in your licensing starting August 1st, 2026. I'm very excited about this. It's something that I've been hoping for a long time. And to me, it will actually allow many more of our customers to actually utilize and implement these features that are so important to your Zero Trust strategy. So let's just show you how endpoint privilege management works. In this example, you're going to see that a user wants to install VS Code. So they're going to right-click, and then they're going to click Run with Elevated Access. You're going to see that they're going to be prompted to actually enter in a justification for this app. For the sake of this demo, we put something very simple in here. I would suggest that you not use a business justification of please let me install VS Code in your actual real-world environment, but you can see how this works. So you're going to see that the request was sent to this end user's administrator to ask them if they can install this app on their device. The first thing I want to point out here is that you'll notice that this user does not have local admin rights on this device. This is the whole point of endpoint privilege management. It's to get rid of that need to have everyone with local admin on their devices, because local admin is how we see the majority of successful attacks actually succeed on an endpoint. And after this request is sent, it's going to send an email as well as put a message in the admin console where a help desk admin or security admin can actually come in here and approve this elevation request. They're going to get all the information they need to make that decision right within the console. And then they're very easily going to be able to enter a reason or a justification as why they're saying that this user can install this app. And then next up, they're just going to click OK, and that user will then be able to install that application, no problem, on their device. So that's endpoint privilege management. As I said, it's going to be part of your M365 E5 licensing come August 1st. But you can also start a trial and use it today if you want to kick the tires and try things out before it's actually generally available to you as part of that new license edition. Now we're going to pivot to what I consider to be probably the cornerstone of our entire Zero Trust story. It's conditional access. And when we look at conditional access, this is really our policy enforcement engine, as referred to by NIST, where we're actually going to be making decisions as to whether or not a user, a device, or even an app get access to certain resources. And this could be, user and location-based conditional access. It could be device-based conditional access. It could be application-based conditional access. It really doesn't matter, but you need to make sure that you are using all of these types of conditional access. One of the things that I always see in walking through Zero Trust with customers as part of our Zero Trust workshop is that, I'm shocked every week basically by a customer. It could be a customer with a huge amount of users, even like 100 or 200 or 300,000 users. And they have these amazing compliance policies that are going and looking at a device and determining whether or not that device, meets certain criteria. Like, does it have antivirus installed? Is a PIN or passcode on that device? Is firewall enabled on that device, or is encryption active? But they don't have a conditional access policy to block non-compliant devices. And I really just wanted to reiterate how important that is, to make sure that you actually have a conditional access policy to block not compliant devices. It's great that you have a compliance policy that you can go and check, and you can basically do a read only and say, hey, look, we have all these devices that are not compliant. We should probably go look at those devices and fix them or correct the issue that's causing them to be not compliant. But if you're not blocking access to corporate resources based on that signal, then you're really setting yourself up for failure and setting yourself up for attack. With conditional access policies, it's best that you start asking these questions: who, what, how, when, and why. With conditional access policies, this is really where you're going to look to define, what users need to have access to what resources, which apps need to have access to which resources, and what conditions need to be present in order to grant access to those resources. When we talk about conditions, we're looking at, when this particular thing happens, we're going to then apply this control or then do this. And when we look at it in action, we're basically just looking at Microsoft Intra reaching out to Intune as part of this conditional access check and saying, Intune, are these devices or apps that are accessing these resources, are they protected? Are they safe? And are they healthy? And that signal will allow you to gate access to your cloud apps and resources using conditional access. And I couldn't talk about zero trust without at least mentioning custom compliance. This is another area of our console where I honestly see so many customers. I would say over 50% of the customers I talk to don't even know that this is an option. But yes, for Windows devices, and we're working on this for Mac OS, you can actually create a custom compliance policy that's going to go out and say, hey, there's something that I want to go check for on a device that isn't included in my standard compliance policy. This could be something like, a third-party firewall, or making sure that, a certain registry setting even is there, that it's something that your company has decided that needs to be there. And what this will allow you to do is actually go and create a script that will go out and check for that particular thing on a device and allow you to block access using compliance policy and conditional access. It's going to allow you to block access to those resources on whatever custom item it is that you decided to go look for on that device. In closing, I want to talk about the Zero Trust Workshop and Assessment. If you go to aka.ms/ZT Workshop, you'll be able to download and utilize the Zero Trust Workshop and Assessment today. The Zero Trust Workshop is really our way of giving you a timeline and kind of allowing you to create your own roadmap for deploying Zero Trust in your environment. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, you definitely know about the Zero Trust Workshop. I talk about it all the time. It's something that we, have developed over the past few years. And you probably know that we, have this Excel spreadsheet that gives you a mapping of the entire Zero Trust strategy mapped to Intune features. So what I'm going to show you today is something that we're going to be releasing at the end of the month in March. And the Zero Trust, the new version of the Zero Trust Workshop is no longer in Excel. You're going to see that we have developed a new web-based UI. This was probably the number one ask that we've had from both our partners as well as customers. basically just to give it a cleaner look and feel. And it also allows us to do things that we couldn't do before. Things like sort or filter. So now you'll be able to actually filter out areas of the workshop that you're not working on with your customer. You can actually look at things like, if you just wanted to focus on NDM for Windows, you'll be able to do that now. And if you haven't seen the workshop, what the workshop allows you to do is basically go through the entire process of things like path to cloud native, which we talked about earlier, and actually walk through and take action and actually say, where am I on this journey? And I can actually say, hey, I've already migrated my group policy to MDM. I can put in notes for each of these items, and I can actually create a roadmap of items that I need to focus on. So if I haven't, actually migrated over my group policy preferences to OMA URIs inside the Intune console, I can actually mark this as, in progress and keep track of where I am on my Zero Trust journey. So that was the Zero Trust workshop. The Zero Trust assessment, which you can download on the exact same page, aka.ms/ZT workshop, is a way for you to go in and do an automated check of the top 39 items that we consider to be most important on your Zero Trust journey in your tenant. And it will even allow you to click on those items and go to the place in the tenant where you could go set that up if you have not configured it already. The next thing I want to talk about is our policy configuration agent. This is something that, to me, really changes the game for Zero Trust implementation in Intune. This does require that you have SEUs for Copilot, but once again, if you're an E5 customer, it's already started rolling out, but at least by July or August timeframe of this year, that you will actually have a certain amount of SEUs included as part of your E5 license. So in order to get here, you're going to click on Agents at the main navigation pane for Intune, and then you're going to click on the Policy Configuration Agent. Once you're here, what this will allow you to do is actually take take setting examples from things like NIST or CIS. And as you can see here, I basically just took a list of settings from the CIS benchmarks for account settings. And I actually did this in Copilot, where I said, hey, go out and pull a list of the level 1 policies for account settings based on the CIS benchmarks in Copilot, and it gave me this list, which I can then upload into the policy configuration agent. And this is where the magic happens. Instead of me having to go into settings catalog and find each of those settings individually, using Copilot and AI, it's actually going to go and review these settings for me. And you're going to see here, it took that Notepad document and it actually analyzed it without me having to input anything. And it generated a list of 5 settings, which I can then use to not only create a configuration policy, but even assign that to certain user groups. It's just that simple. And if you look here, it's actually going to have all those settings listed where I can say, hey, you know what? These are the policies that I wanted to add. And it's allowed me to actually create a policy with these 5 settings with almost no work, almost no time taken. And then I can just go choose who I want to apply those security policies to in my environment and push out the policy. So I know this has been a whirlwind session. We only had 25 minutes, but I hope that what you got out of this was just how important not only having a Zero Trust strategy is, but also having a Zero Trust strategy that's focused on cloud native endpoints and cloud native management within Intune. And I hope it also really just iterated how easy it is to get started with Zero Trust. If you're scared of Zero Trust, don't be. Like, it's something that you've got to start today. But at the same time, as you're going through your Zero Trust journey, make sure that you are actually implementing things that we talked about today, like endpoint privilege management, conditional access, or using the policy configuration agent to actually apply industry standards to your endpoint estate. Thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a good day.